Devil's Triangle, time and place. Morning on the long dock that gives seafaring customers access to supplies and fuel at Jones Marina on the island of Bermuda. As Bailey Velos, a tan and athletic woman in her early 30s, lifts a pair of binoculars to her eyes, marina owner Wilton Jones walks up. "Who did Joey take out for a cruise this time?" Jones asks. "Sonny Brasco," Velos says. "The Sonny Brasco? He's a new client of my husband's." "Bailey, every time you come here on holiday, he takes some criminal out on the boat while you take the plane. Hardly seems fair." Bailey scans the waters through her binoculars, zeroing in on a medium-sized cabin cruiser, the Sea Spray, slowly approaching. "There they are, but I don't see anyone on deck." Bailey passes the binoculars to Jones, who looks through them. "Hold on," Jones says. "They're flying a distress flag." Time and place. Minutes later, Bailey and Jones board the Sea Spray from a launch, and Bailey quickly moves to Joey's weak, sunburned figure. "Why didn't you look for us?" Joey asks. "We were lost out there for so long." "Joey, you left Miami 5 days ago." Jones comes up from the cabin saying that no one else is on board. "Sonny's gone, abandoned ship," Joey says. "We were out there for 3 weeks. Time and place. Later that day, Bailey sits by Joey's bed in the hospital while an older man, Dr. Whitney, stands nearby. Joey slowly opens his eyes. "Hey, babe, glad to see you," he says. "Did you find Sonny?" "Coast Guard's been combing the area for nearly 12 hours, Bailey says, shaking her head. "Nothing. Joey said you were lost. Why didn't you radio for help?" "All our instruments went dead. We were out there for at least 2.5 weeks. "Honey, I was there when you guys left 5 days ago," Bailey says. "That's impossible. We ran out of food on day 7, and then we saw things out there that I can't explain, and then Sonny panicked," Joey says. "He took off in a life raft before I could stop him." Time and place. Several OSIR vehicles pull up near Jones Marina the next morning, and case manager Connor Doyle, physicist/statistician Peter Axon, and psychobiologist Lindsay Donner get out. Doyle gives an initial case log entry. Case manager Connor Doyle: "We have arrived in Bermuda to investigate claims of an unusual marine phenomenon. As a matter of historical record, this is not the first time the OSIR has investigated anomalous activity in this region." "Glad to be back here, Doyle?" Axon asks. He turns to Donner, saying that Doyle is a resident expert on Bermuda. "6 times I've led teams out there, and 6 times we came back with nothing," Doyle says. "Don't expect this time to be any different." Marina operator Wilton Jones gives the first interview. "The weather officers reported clear skies and calm winds all along the route they were sailing. According to their port of origin, they last checked in by radio with Miami 4 days after they set sail. They reported calm seas and said everything was fine. The next day we found them drifting offshore." Joseph Velos stands in his hospital room sipping coffee. "We had clear sailing all the way past the Bahamas," he said. 4 days out of the Caicos Passage, we hit some kind of zone, some place where time and weather and the laws of nature didn't apply. Before I could stop him, Sonny was gone." Time and place. Doyle and Axon, along with other investigators, board Sea Spray, which remains docked at the marina. "No structural damage visible beneath the waterline," Axon says. Jones says the only thing he found was dead instrumentation. "Every piece of communication is inoperable, but there's no sign of damage. It's like the instruments just stopped working." "Remove all the electronic-based equipment from the ship and get it to the lab," Doyle tells an investigator. According to his story, their watches stopped on day 4 when they encountered some kind of dense weather system, Doyle continues. Then it apparently knocked out all their instrumentation. If they lost instrumentation, how could they know how much time was passing? He claimed they had no indicators, no sun, no moon, no stars, Axon says. Joey mentioned an old clock in the main cabin. For some reason it kept working, Doyle says, opening the face of the clock. No electronic parts. Interesting. Later that day, Donner interviews Joey under deep hypnosis in the dimly lit hospital room. Joey, where are you now? She asks. I'm with Sonny on the Sea Spray. We left from Miami and we're going to meet Bailey in Bermuda, he says, flashing back. Do you remember what happened? Donner asks. I thought it was a storm, but it wasn't any kind of storm I'd ever seen, Joey says. It was as dark as though someone had thrown a switch. Then we were dead in the water, no power, no instrumentation. We drifted for weeks. And then one day, Sonny just couldn't stand the waiting anymore. Joey flashes back, seeing Sonny rowing in the distance further into the blackness. Doyle and Donner talk after the interview. Were you able to pinpoint the exact time the Sea Spray left port in Miami? Doyle asks. Confirmed by the Coast Guard. We also confirmed the presence of the other man on the boat, Donner says. They walk over to Axon, who stands by a bank of monitors. Bailey Velos made this videotape the day they set sail from South Beach, Axon says, pushing play. The tape shows Sonny Brasco tentatively stepping onto the Sea Spray. As the Sea Spray pulls into the harbor, the two men wave to the onshore camera. Bon voyage, Bailey yells. Axon freezes the tape. Check out the date, he says. August 6, 1996, Doyle says, 5 days before they arrived in Bermuda. And our physicians confirm that Joey Velos was exposed to the elements for nearly 3 weeks, Doyle says. Axon freezes the tape on Sonny Brasco. According to the Dade County DA's office, Sonny's a mid-level supplier for a major Colombian drug cartel, Donner says, was in the process of turning state's evidence when he disappeared on Joey's boat. Let me guess, everyone in the Bogota phone book would want him dead, Doyle says. And maybe Joey was given the job. He is connected to some very high-level criminal elements, Axon says. So he cooks up a Bermuda Triangle hoax to cover up a murder, Doyle says. The next morning, Doyle gives a case log update in the mobile unit. After completing our initial assessment, we have reason to believe that the Sea Spray could have encountered some type of paranormal event, yet there remains a strong possibility of this being a hoax perpetuated to cover up a murder. On a large monitor are aerial survey maps of the Bermuda coastal waters. A cloud not unlike a hurricane swirls in the center. These aerial survey maps were taken yesterday 100 miles off the Bermudan coast, Axon says. Looks like a tropical depression, Doyle says. According to the weather offices, it isn't. They record clear skies along the entire Puerto Rican Trench. Here's why, Axon says, hitting a button. The image on the screen changes to clear skies over the same location. Gone, just like that, Doyle says. It has no pattern we can detect. It only appeared on our aerial survey once, Axon says. Why was the one clock we found on the Sea Spray still functioning, Doyle asks. The main difference between it and the rest of the equipment is that it is made of brass components, Axon says. My guess is there was some sort of electromagnetic interference that hit the other instruments. The clock is paramagnetic, made from copper and zinc components. The rest of the instruments on board were ferromagnetic, that is, they had iron-based components. If Joey's story is true, then the lost man could still be out there, alive, Doyle says. Time and place. That afternoon, Axon, Donner, and other investigators load various monitoring equipment onto the Sea Spray, while Donner records a case update. I have decided to move the next phase of the investigation to the location of the phenomenon itself, Doyle says. The team has prepared a floating mobile lab aboard the same vessel and will go to the exact coordinates of the events. Doyle turns from the deck of the Sea Spray to face Joey, who moves near the boat on shore. You think I killed Sonny, don't you? You think I just let you take my boat out there to prove I fed him to the sharks? He bailed. He abandoned me. He deserves whatever happened to him, Joey says. Maybe he's still out there, Doyle says. If your friend is alive, we'll find him. The Sea Spray cuts through the Atlantic Ocean. Donner moves up with 2 mugs of coffee, handing one to Doyle. Look, I have to ask you, Donner begins, what made you lead all 6 investigations out here? Why you? Back when I was in the Navy, I was on operations out here when we encountered an area of the sea where the laws of physics didn't apply. We lost navigational control and then hit something. My ship began going down. I sounded general quarters and began evacuation. Most of the men got off the ship, but by the time Air Sea Rescue found us, only myself and my executive officer were still alive. As Axon and other investigators man consoles in the Sea Spray lab, Doyle comes in saying they're nearing the outer limit of the zone. We've encased all of our instrumentation in copper-based shielding. Axon says it should keep everything safe from outside electrical or magnetic charges. A couple of days later, Doyle records an update. We have patrolled the coordinates of the alleged anomaly for 48 hours without incident, he says. We have released submersible probes and extended sonar and radar ranges to the maximum gain. So far, nothing consequential has turned up. Doyle sits looking over a map of the area when Axon enters. You'd think I'd learn, Doyle says. There's nothing out here but bad luck and deep water. You have any idea what we could be facing? You've seen this phenomenon before, haven't you? Axon asks. That was a long time ago, and I didn't see much. It was pretty dark that night. Then Donner comes up the stairs. Doyle, we've got something. They follow her, and Axon sits down at a console and points at a monitor. Doyle leans in over Donner's shoulder. Compass started acting strange as soon as it appeared on radio, Donner says. How far off is it? Doyle asks. Half a mile and closing, Axon says. A dark mass appears on the radar screen. Doyle tells Axon to keep tracking it, and Doyle and Donner go upstairs to scan the horizon with binoculars. Donner sees something on the port side of the boat. Radar is picking up something really big, and it's nearly on top of us, Axon says over the comlink. The team stares out to sea, mesmerized by a dark, roiling mass of clouds looming ahead. Doyle, our radar is beginning to fade from some kind of interference, Axon says. Ahead full, Doyle says. We are now operating under code red status. Man your stations and begin recording data. Whatever. The team disperses with a growing sense of purpose. Those on the deck look around in wonder as the boat moves into the mass. The sky is black and a wind blows. An odd glow illuminates the faces of the crew. Then the monitoring equipment starts malfunctioning and shorting out. Suddenly, Axon regards the instruments with alarm. They stop working. Doyle, we're being bombarded by electromagnetic fields, he says. Instrumentation is going dead. Switching over to shielded instruments. Doyle glances at his watch, which has stopped. Backup systems are operational, Axon continues. Data recording is being maintained, Axon says, noticing a blip on the radar. Doyle, we've got something half a click to the port bow. Doyle, do you copy? Axon realizes the comlinks don't work because they're unshielded. Up on deck, Doyle and Donner scan the water around them, still illuminated by the odd light. Axon comes up, calling Doyle and Donner back down. They study the shielded radar. Can you identify it? Doyle asks. Small craft, Axon says. It's floating at the center of the phenomenon. As the ship speeds over dark waters, Donner sees through her binoculars a small life raft floating. Donner and Axon look at the radar. We've got another problem, Axon says, noting that the mass is rapidly contracting, closing in around them. Oh gosh, Doyle says. Behind the raft, the black mass approaches. Sonny Brasco is barely alive inside. The ship closes in on the life raft. The rushing black mass finally overtakes the ship, passing through Doyle. As it does, he yells out in frustration, Now! In the life raft, Brasco watches the blackness envelop him in horror. Suddenly, the skies become clear and sunny. Doyle stands on the deck of the ship, trying to keep calm, but the life raft and Brasco are nowhere to be seen. Donner and Axon come up on top, and the team gathers by the railing, staring out at the now calm ocean. How long? Doyle asks. Inside the phenomenon for 56 minutes, 38 seconds, Axon says. Mainland Bravo team clocks us inside the phenomenon for 5 minutes, 38 seconds, Donner says, listening to his comlink. And Brasco? Doyle asks.